The seating card had my sister's whole guest list printed in gold, 200 names in careful little rows, and mine was not one of them. I stood at the edge of the lawn in the shoes I'd broken in on 3 continents, holding a card that didn't hold me, while a man with a clipboard asked if I was with the catering company. My dad texted me one line that afternoon at my sister's wedding, and I still have it saved. No one cares about your career. He had no idea that in 90 minutes, 300 people would stand up for it, and the loudest lawn in the county would go completely silent. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Welcome back to Calm Drama Stories, where quiet women finally get the last word and the loudest rooms go still. My name is Cassidy Dalton, and if a story ever made you sit up a little straighter, you're home. Drop a comment, tell me where you're watching from, and be sure to subscribe. I'd left my apartment near the base at dawn, coffee going cold in the cup holder, and I drove the whole 4 hours with the radio off. That's a thing I do now. After a deployment, your ears get tired of noise, and the quiet feels less like emptiness and more like a room you can finally sit down in. I'd been home 5 weeks. 5 weeks of sleeping in a bed that didn't move, of grocery stores that were too bright, of people asking how my trip was, like I'd been to a resort. My phone buzzed on the passenger seat somewhere past the second rest stop, and I glanced over at a red light. It was from my command. "Keep your phone on this weekend, Commander." That was the whole message. No context, no explanation, which in my line of work is not unusual and also never means nothing. I typed back a simple copy that, "Ma'am," and set the phone face down. In 14 years, I've learned that when the Navy tells you to stay reachable, you don't ask why on an open line, you just stay reachable. So I did what I always did. I filed it away, kept both hands on the wheel, and told myself it was probably paperwork. The exit for my parents' county came up green and clean, hedges trimmed to the inch, and I felt my shoulders climb toward my ears without permission. I'd face down things I'm not allowed to describe. And still, the closer I got to that long white gate, the more my stomach folded in on itself like a letter nobody was going to read. Why would they need me reachable, I wondered, at a wedding 400 miles from anywhere that mattered to the Navy? My mother met me on the front steps of the estate with a smile she keeps for photographs. Colleen Dalton has spent 30 years managing how our family looks from the outside, and she is very good at it. She hugged me the way you hug someone you don't want to wrinkle, one arm, cheek to the air beside my cheek. And then she stepped back and did the thing she always does. She looked at my clothes. I was wearing gray slacks and a plain navy blouse, ironed, clean, the most civilian thing I own. Her eyes went from my collar to my flat shoes and back up, and something in her mouth tightened a 1/4 inch. "You made it," she said, like she'd bet against it. "We're so glad." Then, quieter, steering me inside by the elbow before anyone on the lawn could see me too clearly. "We'll talk about the seating later. It got complicated." Complicated is a word my family uses the way other families use. I'm sorry. The foyer smelled like lilies and lemon polish. There were framed engagement photos everywhere. Delaney and Preston laughing on a dock. Delaney and Preston under a tree. My sister's face blown up to the size of a window in every room. I set my bag down by the stairs. "Where do you want me?" I asked, because that is always the question in this house, and I have always answered it. My mother's smile flickered like a bulb about to go. "Just, stay flexible for me today," she said, and patted my arm, and was gone in a rustle of silk toward the kitchen. I stood alone in a house full of my sister's face, wondering exactly what got complicated, and already knowing it was me. Here is what I could not tell my mother, or my father, or the man with the clipboard, or you, not really, not the parts that matter. Something happened on a deployment almost a year ago. There was a night. I've signed my name to enough documents to know which words I'm allowed to arrange and which ones will land me in a room with no windows. So I'll say only this. I did my job. And then I did a little more than my job. And when it was over, 2 people were alive who should not have been, and 1 was not who should have been. That's the shape of it. That's all I get to give you, and all I gave anyone. My command's message sat in my pocket like a stone. "Keep your phone on this weekend. I have a habit my old chief calls overcarrying. If something can be my responsibility, I'll pick it up, I'll strap it to my back, and I'll walk it home so nobody else has to." It's kept people alive. It's also why I was standing in my parents' foyer, freshly home from my most recent rotation and still carrying a knight from almost a year before, wondering how to be useful at a wedding I wasn't in. I'd deployed again since that night and come home 5 weeks ago, and none of the distance had put it down. Because that's the deal I've always made with this family, unspoken but ironclad. If I'm good enough, if I'm quiet enough, if I carry enough, then one day they'll look at me and be proud. I was 34 years old and still paying into that account. I didn't know yet that the account had been closed for years, and I was the only one still making deposits. But I'd find out that weekend, and the man who finally showed me was already fixing his cufflinks in the room upstairs. My father came down the staircase like he was arriving somewhere important, which, in his mind, he always is. Gerald Dalton is 62, silver at the temples, and he runs a real estate and title firm that put his name on half the signs in this county. People shake his hand at church. That handshake is his whole religion. He saw me at the bottom of the stairs, and his face did the arithmetic it always does, quick and cold, adding up whether my presence was an asset or a problem to be managed. Cassidy. He said my name like a line item. You're here early. I wanted to help, I said. His eyes did what my mother's had done, traveled down my plain clothes, and I watched him decide I'd passed the lowest bar. At least I wasn't in a uniform. Good. Good. A couple in linen drifted past the open door, and my father's whole body changed, warmed, brightened. Bill. Susan. Come in. Come in. He steered them toward me with a hand on each of their backs. This is my eldest, Cassidy. She does something with the military. Administrative side, I think. Very steady girl. Administrative side. I have a security clearance most senators can't dream of, and my own father introduced me like I answer phones. I smiled and shook their hands because that's what steady girls do, and I felt the old familiar burn start low in my chest, the one I've spent a career learning to breathe through. So nice to meet you, Susan said, already looking past me toward the champagne. My father was already gone, already laughing at something Bill said, his hand on Bill's shoulder like they were brothers. I stood there in the warm lily air, introduced and dismissed in the same breath. I found out I'd been cut from the wedding party by accident, from a florist. She was checking her list in the dining room and asked me, kindly, if I was one of the bridesmaids so she could set aside a bouquet. I was told there'd be 4, she said, frowning at her clipboard. But I've only got 3 names. 3 names. My sister has 1 sister. I went and found my mother in the kitchen, and I kept my voice level, the way you keep your voice level when you're holding something that could break. Mom, am I not standing up with Delaney? She didn't turn around from the flowers she was fussing. Oh, honey, it just got so crowded up front, and the photographer said the line looked cleaner with an even number, and you're always so busy. We didn't want to obligate you. She said it all in one smooth breath, the way you read a script you've rehearsed. Could you keep an eye on the gift table for us, though? You're so good at logistics. I had asked to be here. I had driven 4 hours. I had ironed the most invisible clothes I own so I wouldn't embarrass anyone. And I was being handed the gift table like a consolation prize with a bow on it. Sure, I said, because the word was already out of my mouth before the burn could turn into anything my mother would have to see. She finally turned, relieved, and put both hands on my arms. You understand, don't you? She said, searching my face for the yes she needed. And there it was, the question my whole family runs on, the one that has cost me 20 years of standing at the edges of rooms. You understand, don't you? Delaney found me by the gift table an hour later, radiant in a robe with bride stitched across the back in cursive, and she hugged me like she meant it, because she did, in the way she means most things, warmly and without looking too closely. You came, she said. I told Mom you'd come.